Good evening, everyone. We're going to start our class shortly. We'll talk about the software testing and quality assurance together. Since this is recorded, I'm starting, so the ones catching up later, they can watch the recording. Okay, I'm going to start with sharing my screen. All right. So first thing, what is software testing and what is quality assurance? So the quality assurance has been a term that's known in many industries about, what we deliver is what we promise to our customers. So when it comes to software testing, the same principle applies. We are doing software testing, quality assurance to make sure that we are delivering what we promise to our clients as a software. So in this series, I'll try to cover a couple goals. So first, I want you to learn about the web application architecture, because it's not just simple one HTML front page. It is a software application on cloud, and it's a web application. So what are the elements of this application? What is the front end? What is the back end? And based on that, what will be our testing points? That's what we're going to talk about. And secondly, we're going to learn about software testing types and their purposes. Then we're going to learn about manual and automation testing and how they differ, how they're similar. And we're going to do a little practice here about test case writing for better test coverage. And lastly, we're going to talk about shift left approach, which is the newer trendy approach in software testing, where it pushes the testing towards the left, which is the beginning of the software development process. Okay. And meanwhile, I would like to open the chat to see if anybody's. All right. So today we're going to talk about architecture. All right, so you can find many of these diagrams on the web about software web application architecture. I found this one as the most simplest one, which covers everything. So I will go over this quickly and then go into detail in the later slides. First of all, we have our users. These are our clients. So we are delivering a product which our users need, and which we hope they use on a daily basis. And how do they access our application, our program? Through a front end, through internet. So that's our front end. And then our application sits right here, the developed application, which is also called business logic. So this is the actual application the developers are developing. You can think about Spotify, you can think about Uber, you can think about any application, Amazon, all of them. The main application itself is the business logic, which processes all the intakes and responds. You can see it gets the request and it responds. But the code base, which also we call it code base, this application cannot work by itself, because nowadays, if you have a user body, you have to log in, you have to store some user information. If you're selling something, you have to store those items on your application. So you need a database, and you need a file system to store your files. All together, we call this backend. So, and then we have the front end, which is we mentioned, where the users interact with your backend, the application. Okay, so now I'm gonna start from the beginning of this web application architecture, starting from the front end. Your users could be using a tablet or a desktop or a laptop or a mobile device to access your application. It could be a mobile application on your phone, for example. What does this provide? So the front end provides only one only one purpose. That purpose is to be the gateway to your application. So that's why the websites we use HTTP gateways, right? So through that gateway, our user is accessing a front end, which is the user interface. It's also called UI. We're going to talk about that as well. And then through that UI, the user can interact with the application that you have. So which is also in some cases called a project. You know, you may hear it in the in the business world as like, I'm working for a project, I'm doing this project, I finished my project. During the market process, you're going to hear a lot about the project. Project is the application. And what does the user do through this front end? The user interacts with the front end, clicks a button, submits something, sends something, uploads something. And all these things are going to the backend as request. So user is requesting something. So through this interface, the business logic receives the request and processes the request and interacts with the database or file system or microservices, whatever else is part of the architecture, and prepares a response and sends that response back to this front end again. So that's how the user is interacting with the application. So the main parts of the application, again, is the front end, which the user interacts with. And we also call it UI, the user interface. It includes user interface. And the backend. Backend is the application itself, the business logic, and the database, and a file system, and microservices, or any other service like big data, whatever else that the application uses, that goes into the backend. Okay, so client side, which is the front end, as we mentioned. What are the parts of the front end? It's the HTML, which renders. So you will hear this word as well. It renders as HTML, which is the face that you see. So this was the basic web page when the internet was created. We were only seeing static HTML web pages. So you would only see and consume what you see, but you wouldn't be able to interact. So HTML styling was not really beautiful in the beginning. Later, CSS is developed. So the CSS libraries are like the themes, like in a sense that we can understand. So these themes are applied to the HTML pages to make them beautiful, more readable, or more attractive. So now these two are still static. So it's just consumed. You can't really interact. You can't really do anything with it. But then the JavaScript comes in. So this is a language that is used to interact with the backend application. So JavaScript provides what? Like provides a button, provides a table, provides forms, provides anything that user can interact with, which later collects data and sends it to the backend. So JavaScript is your interaction layer. So the user interaction layer. When you're learning about testing automation, you're going to learn about interacting with the UI, with HTML elements. So you're going to hear this word as well. It's interacting with elements through as if the user is interacting. You're going to use like a Selenium driver, and then all those codes in different languages. It could be JavaScript, it could be Java, it could be Ruby, it could be anything. But you will interact with the JavaScript layer. And then there are other libraries like React or Angular or Vue. So these libraries provide pre-built tables, pre-built forms, pre-built other things that you see on the UI. So these libraries are used commonly, especially React and Angular are used commonly to build the web interface, which is also called UI. Okay, now we're going to go to the server side. So this sits on the internet, right? So it's just the HTML is rendered. User sees this HTML. It has JavaScript elements in it. It's built with React and Angular. libraries, the pre-built elements, pre-built structures on your web interface. In the backend, we have the actual business logic, which is the application itself. When you say Uber, for example, Uber is the business logic. Amazon has a business logic. So that sits as a huge monolithic application, or it could be split into microservices, but it is the business logic. And then what else we have in the backend? We may have one or more databases. So it's inevitable. It could definitely MySQL or SQL or a different database. There has to be a database to store data and then, modify data, create, write, delete. So the database has to exist. UI UX design. UI stands for user interface. UX is the user experience. So this from here, if you remember, JavaScript was experience. So you may relate the UX is more related to JavaScript part of it. And then UI is more related to HTML, CSS using React or Angular. So this is the user interface. This is what the users see. So these are the main components of the application. So in the web application, again, you have a data layer. You have to store data. You have to interact with data. You have to write, delete, do things with data. And then you have the business logic layer, which is the application itself, as I just mentioned. So this is the application. If it's Amazon, this is Amazon. If it's Uber, this is Uber. And then you have the presentation layer, which is the UI UX level. So as a tester, we do testing in all these layers. So if you're doing functional testing, you have to do it through either presentation layer, interacting with the UI, with the visible part of the page, and then interact with the business logic layer. So as you can say, business logic means there are flows, there are processes that are working to deliver what the client is there for, right? What the end user is there for. So functional testing, you can do functional testing with interacting with the presentation layer, like using a Selenium WebDriver, clicking on the things on the web page, on the UI as if there's a user interacting with it. Or you can interact with the backend directly, which is called also API testing, or it doesn't have to be API, but it's the backend testing. So you can skip this presentation layer and you can interact directly with the business logic layer, which is the application itself, through a server connection, and again test the function. So functional testing through those two. And also you need to do at some point a database testing, because you want to know if this logic is interacting with the database the way that you want, if it's storing the data properly, storing it on the right table, the right column, so not mixing up with the other users, or properly deleting, properly adding information to the database. So those are the tests that we do. We do functional testing, which we interact with the logic layer through presentation layer, front-end testing, or directly with the business logic layer, which is the back-end testing. I mean, not back-end testing, just it's the API testing, you can call it, but it's still functional testing. And you can do the database testing directly interacting with database, or interacting with the database through the business logic or through the presentation layer. So you can interact with the database directly, or through the business logic, or through all three layers, through the presentation, through business logic, and the database. So we do all these type of testing. So in software testing, everything sits on these layers. So that's why I wanted to share this slide. So data layer, it explains. So this is the web application manages and retrieves all user data related to application, and then stores, and then it modifies, and And now there is something new, it's called a big data. It takes some companies collect so much data, and it has to be controlled, and it has to be analyzed in a different level. So that's why like a big query is used. So that's a different story. It's not a database. It's a big query is the data processor. And then usually the data is processed through services like Kafka. So that sorts, collects data, and then sorts data. So there are some other layers, but I just to simplify it, since this is our first lesson, we're just going over these things. And we don't really, at some point in your career, you may end up testing those different layers. But for a tester, for a software tester, it's important to know all the levels of testing, all the testing points. So when you need to test something, you can, tell what's happening, what the flow is, what the logic is. So it's really important to understand how the application works as a user, and also how the application works as a developer. Especially if you want to be an SDET, a software development engineering test, you're expected to understand the back the under the hood level understanding of the application. So you just don't know, you're not just manually testing the front end, but also you understand how the application works. So that's why I picked this architecture topic as the first topic to go over, because it is really important for you to understand from the 10,000 feet level how the application works. So the business logic level again comes down to the application itself. So you can read through these presentations, but again, the business logic is the application. So if you're talking about Amazon, this is the Amazon. But if you think about it now, the services, web services, are really not serving one purpose. Even Facebook has a marketplace, has a messenger app, has some other elements that you can if you click on the menu, you see so many different applications within an application. So that's why they call those applications as platforms. And a lot of web applications are now turning into platforms. That's why they need testers for each application within the platform. So I would say that's why the need for testers will never end. Even the shift left happens, which proposes developers will be becoming the testers, but it will never end. So there will be always new positions available in the application testing world. And if you understand the context, if you understand the purpose of the software tester, you will find your place. And then the presentation level is the front end. We talked about it. It's the UI, user interface, and user experience. Okay, and I got all this information from this website, so courtesy to that. All right, I'm not gonna go into the day two. So at this point, it's been around 20 minutes. I'm gonna now show some practical things. So I'll stop sharing, and I'm gonna share again a website, and then we're gonna go over the web application and understand the tools and how the front end, back, and all those things work now. All right. All right. So let's put this away. All right. So I found this application online, and I found I thought it'll be a good example to use. All right. Here's what we're gonna do. Right click. Let me do that again. This is your best friend. As a tester, you will use this on daily basis. If you're testing a web application and everything is now web application, you will be using this tool on daily basis. So right click, inspect. Chrome, Firefox, it doesn't matter. Edge, they're all Chrome based anyways. You will use these tools. Okay, so what do we see here? Now let me make this one a little bigger. All right. So first tab you see here is elements. And if I move around here, as you can see, different parts of the page is highlighted, right? See where we're going? See? We're still on this level. I'm going deeper and deeper and deeper here. There's a form, you see? Right here, this is the form. There's a form method. You see a PHP. When you see PHP or JavaScript, there is an interaction. See, there's some logic here. As we're learning the coding part, that these will make more sense. But what we see here in the elements is the HTML. So this is the HTML. So I wanted to show you this because this is rendered as part of the application. The application renders this HTML, this page for you. Okay. And you can interact with every single element here. You can go over an element, and every single thing you see on this page is an element. You can right click on the element and you can see there's an input right here. It's a text input. It's a username user. Let's see. Yes, username user. And the space placeholder text is username. Let's see. Placeholder username. See? Placeholder name is username. So everything you see here is on this elements. Again, let's go back here with clicking right clicking and inspect. There it is. So the first thing you see is the UI. Let's go over the UX sources. So UX, if you remember, it was JavaScript interactions. Oh, you see the CSS right here. So CSS was the theme or template, right? So let's see something. Let's change something here. Grid table. So the background color for the grid table is white. Let's see if we change this one, what happens. Seems like this is not this table. All right, let's first log in and see what happens. So this one gives some examples of root, and then okay. So we're in here. Save this. Oops, didn't log in. I apologize for this. Okay. This is where I found this application. Let's go to any one of these. Movie database. Let's check this one out. All right. Root. Okay. So we're right here in the application. Let's look at it again. Let's look at the source. We said the CSS is for styles, theme. You can see HTML here. Let me just make this one. So you can change, you see all the themes about like the width of the table, style of the table, everything is right here. The background color. So whatever you make change here, it applies to the page that you see. Okay, so what else here? Let's see. I'm trying to find anything that is already visible on this screen. Grid table. So you can play with these colors and it will make some changes here. Grid table body. Scroll. I'm assuming this one is that. Okay, so that's for the CSS. So I can show you exact color change, but you can play around, and then on any page you can right click and go to CSS and play with the style. You can play with the fonts. You know, you can change anything here. I mean, like here, that's the file. But what else we see here? We see some jQuery. We see some JavaScript file. So this is a JavaScript. You see there's a function right here. So this JavaScript, the source part JavaScript, is how the interactions happen here. Like here's a file uploader. When the file is uploaded, this happens. And this chunk of code, so there are variables, edit. So this chunk of code interacts with the business logic, with the backend. So let's look at the backend, and the network tab is the backend. So there we're going to see the backend actions. For example, now there's nothing happened. Let's see. Once I start doing something, now you're going to see the backend actions. So the requests that I'm making as a user going to the application itself, which is the business logic. So I clicked, and as soon as I clicked, you see there are, so let me make it smaller. You see all these calls happened in the backend. Write, collect. So these are the requests. For example, I want to edit this, right? So I click edit. It just opened the page. So let's see what that edit looks like. See, collected information. So there's a payload. So all these details, we're going to learn all these things. So no rush for those, but I just want to show you how the backend works, how anything you do here through the network is interacted through the network with the server. So if you want to say again, you have this web page, right? You have this web page with HTTPS connection sitting on the internet. So this is on the internet, right? And then you have your application sitting somewhere in the server. Now they're all mostly on the Google Cloud or AWS. They're on cloud, but it is still a server. So, and the application is in the server. So user at my home, I'm sitting here interacting with internet UI interface, user interface through user experiences and accessing through the network to the application business logic. And as I make changes here, those changes, as I make changes here on the UI, those are sent to the business logic, which is in a server somewhere else, and it's processed, and the result is sent back to me. So that's how the application works. So application works through HTML, as you can see here, UI, HTML, and user experience, which is the JavaScript interactions, user interactions. It's not static anymore. I can enter something here and I can save it. And those save changes will be saved. And I can see those changes happening, written, like it writes these changes on the application itself to the database somewhere. So that database piece, you cannot see it here, but you can see this request or the payload that goes to the database. So in summary, let me stop sharing. So in summary, the application, how the application works is you have the user experience, the front end, which is the web page, right? That's what you see is a web page, and user interacts with the web page. And that interaction part is done through JavaScript most of the time. That interaction allows user to send requests to the server where the backend lives, right? The backend lives in the server. Backend includes what? Includes the business logic, the application itself, and also it includes the database. And if there are some other microservices and extra things, but we don't need to worry about those yet. We can say the backend includes the application itself, business logic, and the database. So my front end sends requests to business logic on a server. Business logic processes that request. Whatever the application is supposed to do, it does that, and then sends a response. It's all about request response. And this request and response is achieved through what? HTTPS. That's what it provides. Gateway. It provides a gateway through the web browser to the application and back from the application to the web browser. So that's how the user interacts. And as testers, We make sure that interaction works properly. That's one thing. The application processes it properly, the functional testing. Database stores it properly, the database testing. And you can even do performance testing, which is a non-functional testing, to see if your system can handle multiple users. So that's all I'm going to share today. In our next session, we're going to talk more about software testing types in more detail. Thank you.